I've got the woe begone, down low Mifwump Blues. But grandfather's garden is the cure for the Mifwump Blues.
My name is Riane Eisler, and I'm president of the Center for Partnership Studies. And I hope you've all been watching and listening to Brie reading in our series of stories from the wonderful book, Grandfather's Garden. And what we're going to be doing today is very special because with me is the author of Grandfather's Garden. And he's not only the author of Grandfather's Garden, but he is a very well-known scholar, a psychologist, an evolutionary systems scientist. He's written over 30 books, including the international award-winning The Healing of a Nation, Darwin's Lost Theory, Darwin's Second Revolution, and he is a former Princeton and UCLA School of Medicine faculty member. He developed the multinational Darwin Project. He co-founded 3 multinational advanced research organizations. And he's also the co-founder, along with me, of the Center for Partnership Studies. And I'm also happy to say that this amazing, creative man, now in his 90s, is also my husband and life partner.
And I want to just say right off the bat that after all this build-up, I just felt that I'm sort of warmed over leftovers to turn to. That if you're expecting pearls of wisdom from me at 95, she just said in his 90s, 95, that's significant. All I got is, I don't have pearls of wisdom. At best, I got jelly beans of wisdom. And my little friend in the background here, does he show up? Is my pointing at my little pal, the teddy bear? He wrote the whole introduction. That teddy, that was that. That's how inspired little toys can be, and that's one of the things that excited me about doing the stories that Brie has just read. Bringing vegetables, etc., to life again. Now, what was the question again?
I haven't asked it yet.
Oh. Okay.
But all right. So here I'm going to ask you 4 questions. The first question is, the prologue to Grandfather's Garden, which Brie read, gives us a peek inside a child's world, your world. How much of this world was born of your personal experience? And how much of this world is about sheer flight of imagination?
Well, let's see. I would say that I didn't realize at the time I was writing it. The story came to me in the prologue, where I was a lonely child, in the cooped up on the shelf in the closet down at the bottom of the stairs, and I had my little world. I realized afterward, several weeks afterward, that was me. That was my own story. That's how I felt. I felt I was a lonely child, and I did have my little world of my own, that I could have my little colored rubber sponge pieces of people and trees and buildings and so on. And I could create my own little world there and create with my little friends. It was all under my control. So that was me. I was a lonely child. And as far as, what was the other?
Oh, well, how much of it was just came out of flights of imagination, of which you have so much?
Oh, it came out of I strongly suspect I may be the last living result of a stream of funny storytellers that began with my great-grandfather, who he was such a good storyteller. He was a revenue officer after the Civil War. He was such a good storyteller, funny storyteller, that the moonshiners had caught him and they were going to hang him. And the legend is that he got to telling a story that they made him laugh so much that they dropped the rope and he escaped and fathered what eventually became myself and all my cousins, etc.
Well, now for question number 2, because you are now not only a grandfather, but also a great-grandfather. And you write in these stories about the importance of kindness, which is perhaps more important today in this time of the COVID pandemic than ever before. And the story, the first story, the wonderful Carnival of Vegetables, inspires readers to consider the miracles that can abound when we choose kind deeds. Now, what role has kindness played in your life, and what can children do to cultivate kind hearts and kind actions?
Well, I think I sort of feel that a lot of it stems from the fact that I had a grandmother that was notably, I loved her, she loved me. She was my surest source of love, unqualified love. And she was a very kind, considerate person who did a lot of good things for the community, a lot of good things for her children and so on. And I think that where that fit in was the combination of storytelling and the kindness thing fits in the way I feel about these little stories that I wrote or I channeled from somewhere. And the thing I'm struggling to say is that the kindness became inbuilt in me. In other words, I was drawn to kindness. I saw it as a mission to spread kindness, spread love, spread decency in the world. And I had that feeling very, very, very young. And I associated with the influence partly of my grandmother. And I think for children today, they can get a lot of this out of the right books where they have people who are being kind to one another and caring for one another. Right now, for instance, I'm reading to Riane at night so she can go to sleep. I'm reading from the Winnie the Pooh stories. A. Milne, Winnie the Pooh. And that little group of people are so kind and so considerate of each other, profoundly impact on children. To have that type of reading matter, and particularly to have it read to them by their fathers, mothers, grandmas, or granddads.
And I'm going to give away a secret right now, because these stories in Grandfather's Garden, guess how they first came about? They came out of stories that David, my wonderful David, made up to tell me at bedtime. And they became the stories in Grandfather's Garden.
Yeah, it was, she couldn't go to sleep and didn't want me to read anything to her, so I started making these crazy stories. And I did about a week or two of them, and she said, these are awfully funny and absorbing and so on. Let's record them. And so we recorded. Unfortunately, all we recorded was that little magic set that, 12 stories now or so. And the thing that fascinates me in retrospect is that it was like the Beatles. The Beatles had a few years in which something was falling in place in the right place. That was these little stories. I couldn't do that now. I couldn't take off and tell a story as any of them, Ham the Clam and so on.
Well, you still tell wonderful stories.
But they don't have the finish that these little ones had.
Yes, I have to say that they were amazing and are amazing stories. And for those of you who want to not only listen, of course, I hope you'll be listening to all of these stories as Brie Mathers reads them in the series that we're doing, but you can also get the book from Amazon, and we'll give you the link. But I have two more questions for you, David. And I will ask you the first one right now. The touching story, The Clam That Made a Pearl, ends with the moral, follow your heart and don't give up. And that, by the way, persistence, has been a motto for both David and me in our lives and in our writings and in everything that we do. And I would recommend to children to keep that in mind, that if at first you don't succeed, try and keep on going. But that story, The Clam That Made a Pearl, is also a powerful story about prejudice and racism. What inspired these themes, David?
Well, many things inspired them, but perhaps to me at least, the most fascinating thing was that my first book, The Healing of a Nation, was a national award-winning book on racism, overcoming the black-white division and so on. And it was an award-winning book. It was I won that prize. The previous winner of that prize was Martin Luther King the year before. And of course, I wrote that book out of the pressure of the civil rights struggle and the need to handle it, to come out positive out of that horrible experience. And I think that that was the sort of hotbed out of which it came.
And I think that you really show in the story about the clam that made a pearl how that in-group versus out-group thinking really can be overcome and must be overcome.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that looking back on it, that at the time I wrote that story or told it and so on, I had just 1 second. I had a feeling that, I know what it was. At the time I wrote it, I had the feeling that I was mainly interested in entertaining her so she'd go to sleep, and I was focusing on the humor there. I particularly enjoyed the fiendishness of Aunt Gertrude in that story. And only recently, when we began to consider even talking about this particular production, that I realized that it had all this inbuilt racism, in-group versus out-group stuff running all through it automatically. The point I'm trying to make is automatically. In other words, I was expressing what the world should be and what children should learn from it out of me innately. In other words, by the time I reached as old as I was then, it was automatic with me, as it becomes automatic, I think, with good people in general, and it's important for children to get that in stories.
So that takes me to the fourth and last question.
You're kidding me.
Yes, no, I'm
Only
serious.
4?
Well, you can make up another question and answer it if you want, but
I have a whole book here.
Okay. Well, this question is, again, how could children come together to celebrate all people and also nature? What are your thoughts?
Well, I go back to the children's reading, children's books, children reading books, having their own little book clubs and swapping books and telling tales, and particularly their parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts and so on, reading to them, because this is the way that they can share a shared experience of moving toward a better world within a disarming context of funny stories and so on, but implicitly it's happening that child or children are learning to be better persons in our world. In other words, I designed these stories, I designed them, I saw them afterward, that they're designed to appeal to children from the ages of 9 to 12 on through the teen, on up to the grown-ups. There's something to hold the attention of all of them, and to cross the divide between parents and children, between parents and grandparents. Children are coming along, they're seeing all these awful things happening in the world. They need the feeling that it's all going to work out, and they need that feeling of they're with their parents. They're not just off here by themselves, and their parents are in another world. They're together, because it's going to take a lot of companionship, close bonding between parents and children to get to where we absolutely have to go, and soon now.
Well, and that really brings me to a very important point. I think of these stories because, David and I co-founded the Center for Partnership Studies, which is largely inspired by my work, but these are partnership stories. These are stories that show that we can image a world where there is mutuality, where there is kindness. And it's not only parents. Some children are in foster care. Some parents aren't able, due to their own life experiences, to give children what they need. So look for those role models. Look for some connection, because that can really change our lives and change our world. And when you hear cruelty, when you hear discrimination, come together and say, no, we don't like that, we don't want that, we want to respect other people. And yes, we want to really care for other people and care for nature. That's so essential for our future. So
beautiful, beautiful. That's just my one comment. How lucky I am to have found Riane.
And how lucky I am.
Over 40 years ago.
And how lucky I am to have found David, my darling. Well, goodbye and good luck, and please take good care of yourselves, children and grown-ups alike. Thank you and bless you. And don't forget, watch and listen to Brie while she reads more from Grandfather's Garden. And if you want to get the whole book, by all means, you can get it at Amazon, and
Or-
we'll give you the link.
Or any bookstore would.
Well, yeah, and right now people are not going out into
Oh, that's right.
bookstores,
Yeah.
but there are other online vendors, and I think if you can possibly do so, support your independent bookstore. Some of them have websites now. Anyway, goodbye and best of luck.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
I've got the woe begone, down low Mifwump Blues. But grandfather's garden is the cure for the Mifwump Blues.